Cool, thanks. Thanks, Alan. So, good morning, everyone. I'm really happy that you all made it. It's a very early presentation, so I came up with an idea with some fellow friends of mine yesterday about how to make this presentation a little bit more fun for this morning. So, I will be introducing you, before starting my presentation, I want to introduce you to a couple of moves that I really would like you to accompany me with during my presentation. To make sure that in a way you are listening to me, you are staying with me, and to get ready for the following presentation. So, I want to give 3 main keywords as takeaways from my presentation, and I have created some moves that are attached to those keywords. So, would you please do this after me? So, the movement for representing co-creation is this one. Everyone is doing it. Amazing. So, and then we have the other word that is imagination, and I want you to do that. Perfect. And then the last one is participation. And you can raise a hand or raise the other hand, use it to stretch a little bit this morning. Amazing. So, what I want you to do now is that every time that I mention either of those words, you're going to do those gestures. Can I count on you for that? Amazing. So, let's try this. So, I'm presenting today SENSEI, co-creating community technology for local environmental monitoring. And I'm going to be talking about a case study that has been running for the past year and a half in Finland. And this case study has been running in a community in a city called Lappeenranta that is on the southeast of Finland. And well, let me try to introduce you a little bit about to what we did. So during the process of this case study, we tried to use a bunch of participatory practices to create technology, community technology, to address issues of shared concern, and also to try to make collective sense of data, of information, to try to solve problems that everyone cares about. So we have this overall framework, that is the framework that we followed, and the framework consists of 7 steps: identification, framing, imagination, amazing, imagination, creation, deployment, orchestration, and sustainment. And I'm going to explain a little bit of what we did in each of these stages so that you get to understand what this case study is about. So, we were approached by a citizen from town who was worried about certain environmental issues and wanted to take action on those issues but needed some help orchestrating activities. So what we did after that was we tried to orchestrate some individual meetings with decision makers and individuals to try to find out what were the most pressing issues. We realized very quickly that what we needed was a little bit of a more orchestrated sort of like community. So we tried to orchestrate some workshops, some public workshops where we brought together decision makers, families, individuals, the researchers, NGOs to discuss what do we care about collectively. What are those issues that we all care about? The interesting thing was that during these workshops, lots of ideas about issues that are important in town came, but many of us expected lots of negative issues to come up because very often is what comes out during a participatory process. However, one very positive thing in this case study and that I would like to remark was a lot of positive things actually came. People actually cared about a lot of positive things, and this was apparently very, very nice for the people from the municipality who did not expect that. So, we had about 50 participants in all the workshops. The entire case study had involved about 250 people by the end. But at this stage, we managed to gather over 100 ideas of concrete issues that they cared about, over 300 ideas of how would they care about those issues, why would they care about those issues, and we managed to find out what were those issues that they care about, which were in this case outdoor places. They were also cared about abandoned things in the forests, wildlife, private information about. I want to know what are the mushroom places that I prefer in town, for example. Once we completed this stage, we proceeded to try to do some imagination workshops. So what we wanted to do in here, some imagination. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So we wanted to see how do we imagine technology as a community. What we wanted to explore in here was how can we break the barriers of the technologies that we already know, that we have already given, and try to imagine new technologies that allow us to take action on the issues we care about in our towns. So we had like a series of workshops as well for this stage, and we have, I think, about 30 prototypes that the community created. I just decided to bring some of them for the slides, but you can find the full list of them on the paper. And there were like some really cool creations, like, for example, on this side, those headphones over there. The headphones are a creation from one of the participants who wanted to attach a button to it so that then they could like press some kind of like button to report issues whenever they would see them. Somebody wanted to use these sort of headphones like these ones to record their voice and describe the issues that they were observing. Somebody wanted to have some globes that they would clap as a way to report things. Somebody came up with like a whole mascot and an entire game mechanic on how would they grow that mascot in the city and use it to take action on some civil issues. Some of them wanted to use clothespins, reflecting pins, wearables. So these workshops were very useful for, I guess, like in that sense, imagining what these technologies could be. But what we did after that was to try to narrow down what would be the things that we would want to take action upon. And we decided collectively that we would take action on 3 things. And then we also started, I would say, a campaign to collect funding to be able to run this platform. So we approached some local foundations, and we were able to collect some money, and with that money we were able to hire a couple of programmers who were able to deploy the platform that would allow all these devices to work. So we brought the devices to life, and then we developed a platform within 2 months and deployed it and gave back this very same platform to the people who had imagined it, so that they could take action on the issues they cared about. So during this process, the interesting thing that we tried to embrace was try to embrace all the critics and all the feedback from everyone, and try to have all the participants as active creators of the platform. So they were actually actively contributing with ideas, with error testings, with every single level of participation they could have. And that was kind of like nice, but at the same time it was very insightful because there were many issues that we would have ignored otherwise. And so the way that this platform would work would be that we would have these 3 types of devices. So one of those devices was this one. It's like a little button that you can either click once or click twice or hold to report different issues. So if you would click it once, you would report a lost item. If you would click it twice, it would be a nice place. And if you would hold it, it would be an abandoned item. So, the very same button was embedded into a bell that you could ring as you would bike. And you would do the same thing, like use it once or twice or hold it in case you wanted to report different things. At the same time, people could use a mobile application, and all of these observations could be mapped into a platform. So interestingly enough, we managed to gather about 300 observations over the period of 4 months, but this was last summer. And the interesting thing was that thanks to the monitoring, actually, some issues that had been on the decision-making or had been missing on the local decision-making were brought up to the table. Like there was an issue on monitoring some items on the forest that the municipality had not taken priority for a few years, and that's something that has been brought on the table, and that right now they have decided to take actions upon using the data that we have collected. So that was a very concrete action point that came out of the project. So once we collected all the data, we realized that many projects get to collect data with crowdsourcing or with community sensing, etc. And after they collect the data, the projects sort of end. But we realized that making collective sense of the data was actually a key point for sustaining engagement, because people got interested on this project probably because they had an interest in a particular issue. However, that interest kind of like faded over the time. So what we started doing then was trying to figure out how can we help them understand the very same data that they had collected, because the relationship that people have with the data they collect is fundamentally different than the relationship that we have with data sets that we don't see. And how do we help them not only improve that relationship, but start critiquing the data that they have scenes. So then, this is one of the public events we had. During this event, we had a deployment of like a interactive exhibit outdoors, where people could come and they could explore the data sets, and they could explore them through a series of games, and then those series of games would evolve to the point that they could have to critique the platform itself, and they would have to make their own representations of their understanding of data. So here, for example, we have a game that is called speed dating, and speed dating, what it does is that it demystifies in a way a data set. So it takes a piece of information and it makes it a character on its own. So you can familiarize with it, and you can feel closer to it in a way, breaking the barrier of neutrality and like foreignness that often data and technology portray. There is this other game that we also used that was called Shark Bites. Shark Bites is a game that is aimed at enhancing the critiquing of data sets. So what you do in Shark Bites basically is that you have 5 cards. These 5 cards are like turned around, and you have the sharks, and you turn around the first card. And when you turn around the first card, you can see how many submissions of that category have been kind of submitted during a week. So, for example, there was week 29, and as I have bad eyesight, there was probably 20. And you have about 20 observations, and then you try to guess. Did the following week have more or less observations? And then you guess, well, I think it had more. Some people would say less. And the idea is that if you guess them all right, you can turn them all. But this very game actually prompts a discussion internally in a participant. A participant eventually realizes, wait a minute, on what basis am I making that assumption? And then they start questioning, why is it less? Is it because of the weather? Is it because people was on holidays? So, and exactly that's the point that we want to reach, because very often when you talk with people, they tend to have this barrier over data. Whenever they are asked to question the data, they're just like, oh, no, I don't know what it is, I'm not going to touch it. And trying to have these sense-making games actually helps you like soften that path and try to build some data literacy skills. So the very last step that we're still working is the step of sustain the project. So this project has had like some activities that have already kind of like sprouted out of it, and some of those are like the decision making was informed during last year. They were actively using our platform for planning, for example, extermination campaigns of invasive plants within the town, and they were using the platform just to plan which are the areas that we should like go and exterminate like some invasive species next. At the same time, the participants, once they collected all the data, they actually reached out to the news, and they have been making stories. They have been interviewed by local newspapers talking about the issues they reported, particularly the issue of abandoned things in the forest. Then there has also been an influence on the decision making. The influence has been rather positive because the decision makers were involved from the very beginning in the process. And I like to think that co-creation is a process through which no one voices are like over other voices. It's a process where all voices are kind of like equal or equitable, if I must say so. So the decision makers were involved from the beginning. They saw the process, and at the end of it, they had actually made very concrete commitments on removing those abandoned items from the forest from this year, to opening all the data that we have within their own platforms, and that was already a good step. At the same time, some of the public schools that are deploying some pilot experiments on how to teach kids science using technology have been used our platform to do that. And in general, the participants are right now writing a report, which we hope that will come out this year. So in short, what did we learn from this experience? So I summarize our learnings in 6 points. And the first learning was meet up. Because I thought that it's very necessary to highlight how important it is to meet people and how important it is to meet with them in a regular basis. Meeting our participants was not only important for the entire initiative on its own, but it was important for the creation of the platform. That platform would not have existed without them and without them giving their critical advice all the time. We had like this, like kind of like 2 weeks sprints through which they could come and they could comment, they could actively send feedback, and that was very important. The second lesson that we learned was the diversity of participation, and what we mean by this is that different types of participation should be welcome, and participating in a let's say, in a less involved way than others, it's okay. So we had people who wanted to participate in all workshops, and they wanted to involve in all workshops, in all monitoring, and that was all right. There was people that wanted to only monitor, and that was all right. There was people who wanted to only use the data for their day-to-day decision-making, and that was all right. So the diversity of participation should be embraced, and there is no type of participation that should be portrayed as better than others in these type of platforms. The next one was enhance shared ownership by welcoming critiques from everybody. So this is something that that was very useful for the platform itself, to have the critiques from the people. But at the same time, the fact that we had these small sprints and that everyone could contribute not only to the ideation of the project, but also to the deployment of the platform itself, although they did not have the technical capabilities, they could come and they could talk to us. This was very important because by the end of the day, they felt that the platform was theirs. And every single deployment that we did, which we did 3, was actually named by the participants. They could name them after their favorite flowers, after their favorite games, after their favorite places. And that's something that enhanced the ownership. So the fourth one is design for diversity across ages, genders, and skill sets. We learned a good lesson about how different ages we had. We had some kids with their families, we had some millennials, we had some elders. Our oldest participant was almost 90 years old. And what we learned was very valuable lessons on how different methods and different features can be interpreted by different people in different ways. So definitely having into account that you will have different participants from the beginning and that they will be, at the end of the day, the ones who are using this type of platform is very important because it will make the platform itself and the success of the platform happen. Then the fifth lesson that we learned, the fifth lesson was that we should fill in knowledge gaps by reaching experts. Very often we found that co-creation projects tend to have a little bit of a focus on trying to create everything from the knowledge of the community. And what happens is that often you miss that knowledge. And when you're trying to push only to create things from the community knowledge, it may happen that, there is, for example, we didn't have any software developer within the community. It happens that within other communities, they happen to have that. So we needed to reach out from the community and manage to gap those knowledge gaps. So that was something interesting, and that's something that we felt that there was a fear of doing so in the literature. There was not much documentation about it, and that's something that we felt that it was important to highlight. And the last lesson that we learned was that do you want to sustain engagement? Well, then start making collective sense of the data, because that will tell people why they are doing the things they are doing, and it will help them to understand what's the purpose of the data they are collecting in overall. So yeah, those are the lessons that we learned from this case study. And as I was saying, the case study is still ongoing with the report that participants are creating. And if you want to read more about us, you can visit, there is a paper over here, and then sensei.fi or FI is basically the website of the project. You can go check it out, and if you have questions or comments or want to deploy the platform, it's an open source platform. If you want to try it out in your own city, please let me know.